Welcome to the patch 4.2 jungle tier list. In here, I will be rating all of the viable junglers from the worst up until the best to give you an idea on what are the strong junglers right now. Take note that this list is only based from my perspective and some champions can be moved upwards depending on the player mastery. Hope that this can help, and without further ado, let's get into it. Starting from the C tier, the champions here are viable junglers but are not commonly seen in the jungle role. There are other possible champions I can include, like Yasuo, but I didn't because these are champions that you prefer not to be seen in the jungle. If you are tired of seeing the same junglers over and over again, you could give these a try, but note that they are mostly only used for fun. For climbing up, there are so much other jungle options that can be used for rank. Next up is the B tier, and these junglers are still not commonly picked but have better impact than the ones listed in the previous tier. Let me briefly explain some interesting champions located here before we move on. Unfortunately, Graves has fallen a tier even though his best role is in the jungle due to the fact that he is a scaling marksman and needs a good composition to make him work. He is low CC, doesn't have strong playmaking potential, and gets outclassed by other scaling junglers in the meta right now. Even though he is strong in the competitive scene, Shen is struggling a lot when it comes to solo queue. This is because, even though he has a strong early game and a global presence due to his ultimate, he falls off really hard when it gets to the mid game, making him an ulti bot. He becomes very reliant on his team to carry. Shen still has the potential to become A tier if there's a teammate that is carrying the game. Ornn is one of the newest champions in wildrift but falls short in this tier. Even though he is able to buy items while clearing the jungle, his clear is just too slow even as a tank jungler. He also has low mobility compared to other tank junglers like Amumu and Nunu and is overly reliant on his ult for ganks. He can definitely become a fun jungle to play, but overall, he is much more suited being in the Baron or support role. Last champion in this tier I would like to discuss is Kai'Sa. Previously placed in the A tier, due to the nerf of her skill 1, she has gotten a demotion. The nerf caused her clear to become way harder, especially when clearing raptors. She could still become a viable jungle, but for now, she is much better off being placed in the mid or dragon lane where she could farm and scale faster. Then we go to the A tier, which is where most of the junglers reside. All of these champions are good picks and have the potential of being S tier depending on the mastery of the player. Since there are so many champions listed here, I just want to talk about some champions that have received some changes and can be even stronger now. The first would be Diana. Even though she did not receive any changes, a lot of people using or playing against her have been saying she is OP. I decided to spam her to test, and at first I didn't see why. But after some research, I realized that I was using her the wrong way since I was playing her like an AP bruiser. When I started to play her like an assassin and going pure AP, I immediately saw the difference and can now understand why people think she is so strong. She definitely can be placed in the S tier, but I have some reservations because she has no outs, and if she gets caught or makes a bad engage, she can get easily punished. We'll still keep an eye out, and the new patch might bump her into S because of the rune system and the sorcerer's boots. Kayn is another champion in this list who received interesting changes. With the recent patches buffing his blue form, he now can get this form before the first dragon if he's able to get at least 2 to 3 ganks on ranged champions. Combining the buffed Manamune with the current blue Kayn, he now becomes very annoying to play against and can burst champions without being reliant on his ultimate. The reason why he has not yet been bumped into S tier because his form is very unreliable since it depends on what the opponent uses and if you're able to farm stacks fast. With the right composition and playstyle, he definitely can be an S tier champion. Then we have Aatrox who has a slight buff and could make it back into the S tier depending on the composition. Xin Zhao, low-key another strong contender for S. Due to the double ADC meta and combining his strong ganks and ulti, he would be able to negate a lot of damage and provide DPS at the same time. AP Jungle Nautilus has fallen off a bit because Shield Bow prevents him to one-shot carries now. Pantheon and Yi are similar where they are strong in the lower ranks but struggle a bit from Diamond above. Last but not the least is Lilia, who was initially strong but with the nerfs and the current meta, she is struggling a lot. Lilia does not have much damage early and is very squishy, making her easily punishable. She is endangered and can possibly go to the B tier unless she receives some significant buffs. Going to the next, which is the S tier, These are the champions that have strong impact, can carry the game, and have good playmaking ability. This tier is quite spicy because the former S plus tier champions have now been dethroned. The biggest example is Lee Sin, who has been S plus tier in my books ever since his release, has now been demoted a tier. The reason being, with the meta right now, being focused on having an impact early and being able to scale to carry the late game team fights, Lee Sin excels on getting those leads, but he lacks the late game carrying potential. Even though he gets fed, one mistake or one lost team fight will nullify the early game lead that Lee Sin gets. He can also get outscaled depending on the matchup. Don't get me wrong, because S tier is still very high, and Lee Sin mains that play perfectly can still put him in the S plus tier. Next would be Kha'Zix. He has also been demoted a tier because his playstyle is dependent on how the opponents play. He is strong and can be S plus if they play careless, but if they are good and are always together, it's hard to make a play. Kha'Zix is good in most situations, which is why he is still in S tier, but when your team has no frontline, it will be hard because no one from your team can engage. Yone and Gwen are similar, where they struggle early but have a monster late game. Their clears are heavily nerfed and are dependent on their team to carry early. That is why they can't be in the S plus tier. Gwen is endangered of going to the A tier because she lacks playmaking ability in the early game, unlike Yone, who has stuns and can contribute a lot more early on. Personally, I still think Shyvana is S plus tier, but with how people are playing her, she is generally an S tier. With Shyvana, you would want to become greedy and abuse her clear speed and get gold, whether it's by invading or split pushing. She has strong carry potential but lacks crowd control, but can make up for it by getting items fast. While in the S tier, Shyvana has the potential of becoming S plus when used correctly. Olaf, Wukong, and Vi all fill a similar role where they are strong early but lack damage in the later part of the game. S tier is perfect for them because even though they lack damage later on, they're quite tanky and can provide utility for the team to capitalize on. Last but not the least is the S plus tier. With the meta rewarding flexible champions that are strong early and have scaling potential, these are your new big 3 champions for this patch. Volibear is the current king of the jungle because his early game is giga-busted right now. He has a fast clear speed and can gank anywhere whether they are overextended or not. If there is a winning lane, he can abuse their lead by using his ulti on the tower, diving on the opponent, and get a free kill. There's zero counterplay to this unless the opposing jungle is there for a counter gank. Aside from this, he is one of the strongest duelists right now, so it's also hard to 1v1 this champion. Volibear may lack a bit of damage in the late game, but he makes up for this by being tanky, having a lot of sustain, and still can burst down squishy targets with his second skill. Next would be Rengar. What's so good about this champion is that he could either build pure damage or bruiser depending on what the team needs. His ultimate allows him to bypass wards, making it very hard to split push against him. Rengar also has good playmaking ability, strong DPS, and can melt towers if left unanswered. His biggest weakness is if he has a disastrous early game and is unable to farm trophies, but if you play him well, this should barely happen. Then the last champion in this list is Riven. Similar to Rengar, she is a very flexible champion where she can be built like a bruiser or go for pure damage. What is so good about Riven is that she can fill any role by being an initiator, burst, DPS, and on top of that has high mobility. Like the other 2 champions listed, she has a strong early game and has good scaling throughout the game. If there's a jack of all trades champion, then Riven definitely fits this category. Her biggest downside is that she is a bit hard to master, but with proper practice, you can become unstoppable. After all that, this is my take on the jungle tier list for this patch. As I said earlier, some champions can obviously be bumped up depending on mastery. If you have any questions, suggestions, or reactions, feel free to comment down below and I will be happy to check them out. If you enjoyed or learned from this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe for more content. That is it for me, and thanks for watching. Peace out. Ciao, ciao.